Welcome to the HDG Stories podcast, where we'll share our threads of memories, knowledge, experience, and history, knitting all generations into a beautiful tapestry. So please like and share, and be sure to subscribe. Now let's get started.
Hi, this is Ellie with another weekly podcast for Havre de Grace Stories. Today we meet Kathryn Hill. Although she wasn't born in Havre de Grace, she was across the state line in Cornwall, Pennsylvania. Her story of growing up on a farm is certainly enlightening. She shares a lot of stories about her childhood, working together with a family to survive, sharing living quarters, often some very strict rules, and like today, she dealt with sibling rivalry. She shares a story of her favorite cousin and also getting agitated with her brother. Listen to the story and the childhood of Kathryn Hill. Welcome, Kathryn. Where were you born?
At home in Cornwall, Pennsylvania.
At where?
Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Named after Cornwall, England. That was several miles from the Cornwall ore mines, which were very important for the iron for the Civil War and to make the cannonballs.
Well, tell me a little bit about your family, your mom and dad and siblings.
I live on a farm. My brother's oldest daughter lives in the same house. Our uncle, my father's brother, lived at the top of the hill, and then you cross the railroad tracks on the bridge, and my grandfather owned that farm. So we were all close together as family.
Were they farmers?
They were all farmers. Most people were farming. That's how you got your food. My father didn't care. He wanted to share the food with anybody who needed it, but don't steal it from me. Just ask me. We had a lot of pheasants, and we'd eat pheasant, rabbits, hunting. We did our own butchering, which was once a winter, which was the coldest part of January. And the family came together and worked and helped to do that. During the year, raising the pigs and the beef cattle for meat through the winter, making the own dried beef and bologna and sausage from scratch.
So you came from like the original homesteading kind of family.
Right. And now my niece lives on the other side of the railroad tracks, and my brother lives underneath another bridge and across the other way where the farm extended over there. So it's lots sold off from the original farm.
What were your parents' names and where were they from?
My father's name was Leonard Zimmerman Schott. His ancestry came from the Spiker family, which was originated in Bern, Switzerland. And I attended a family reunion, so I have a coat of arms from there.
Wonderful.
My mother, she came from Lebanon. She was raised in the city, one of 4 children. Her father was a cabinet maker, wooden cabinet maker for organs, furniture. He earned his living and he worked at the factory.
What was your mom's name?
Carrie, Carrie, Irene Bachman, Bachman, Schott, Schott, 2 T's. And my parents met in church.
Siblings?
I had an older sister. She just passed away at 95.
And her name was?
Frances Veronica Schott Yeager, Yeager. No children. Then I had a brother. He has 3 children. He was 3 years older than I was, and being a boy, he could drive, go with his friends, get out and do things. I couldn't go anywhere unless somebody came and picked me up, or my father said, I'll take you anywhere. He bought me a pony when I was old enough to take care of it, probably around 12, between 10 and 12. I loved animals, so he bought me a pony, and that was my transportation to go see my girlfriend. It worked fine, and it beat walking. But one day I didn't tie the pony tight enough, and Betty went on home without me. So after that, I really appreciated her, and I learned how to make sure that my knot was the proper knot and tight, because that was a long walk.
Some lessons really stick with us.
Yes.
So tell me then a little bit about what your childhood was like.
Being the youngest, I had a young cousin, my one aunt. I had two aunts on my mother's side, and my one aunt had two girls and a boy, and her youngest, Mary Grace Kratz, she's deceased now, 14 years. She had Alzheimer's. She inherited that from her father. Her father and mother met on the mission field, so when they came home, they had no place to live, so they lived with us. And we were close, 18 days apart. We were close in age. So we were the little girls. And they always teased us, even when we went to the outhouse, it had 2 seats. And then we'd go to the bathroom. We would any place else, but being the outhouse, it was a 2-seater with Cecil book magazines. So I was the youngest of 3. So I was on the end of the money, too. And being on a farm, the cash came from milking cows. And then helped my brother with these heavy cans of milk. And we put it on a balloon tire wagon. And it had hickory boards on it, so it was very strong. The tires lasted most of my lifetime. If the boards broke, my father would replace them. It had a brake on it, and we could ride down the hill. It was fun to play with. But it also took the cans out to the road to put up on the stand. And my brother would go and look up and down the road to make sure there were no cars coming. He didn't want somebody coming by and seeing and having his sister help him put these cans, take them across the road and up on the stand. And it was funny. Now you stay here, and I had to stay behind the edge of the barn. And there was a gate right there. And when he didn't see anybody, we hightailed it across the road to get the milk cans.
You didn't want anybody to know you were helping.
No.
How old were you when this was happening?
Oh, you start working very young on the farm.
Yep.
When I was doing that kind of lifting, I was a teenager. What had happened, my brother, 3 years older, he always teased me. I'm 3 years younger, I can't do this, I can't do that. And he agitated me. When we'd walk to the bus, which was about 3/4 of a mile, I didn't go to kindergarten, but I started out as 5 years old in 1st grade. So that meant that when I graduated from high school, I was 17. I was in college when I was 17 years old. So, and my parents said, well, my brother wasn't in love with farming. So he wanted to go off to the Army. So he did. And he said, I want to go off to the Army to see the world. And when he got in the Army, they stationed him at the other end of Pennsylvania where he lived, at Blawnox, outside of Pittsburgh, and had never been away from home and didn't like to go away from home. Well, it came the time where he had a girlfriend, and she lived in Quentin, a little town where the Quentin Riding Club is, a very, very prestigious horse riding club. It came all over and good horses, and they had quality horse shows. She lived in Quentin, and she was one of 3. So he went to the Army and started dating when he came home. And at 21, they got married at her church in Quentin. Then she went with him when he was still in the Army, with him to Pittsburgh, and they befriended his family, Aunt Lucy, and became part of her family. They lived in a small one-bedroom, it sounded more like an efficiency apartment, with Aunt Lucy, and that's how she got to know. You had to go in, straight in, and then close the door so you could sit down on the commode. It was so small. So they soon got tired of that, and they wanted to come home. So when he got out of the Army, they were back home, living on the farm with my parents in the big farmhouse. Of course, I was at college, so.
So tell me more about you from early years up to college. What was school like?
School was fun. I enjoyed school. And when I started school, it took a while till we had a gymnasium, because you rode the bus and you walked 3/4 of a mile to the bus. I had to cross the highway in the morning, and most of the time I was by myself, except when I was younger, my brother was with me. But as I got older, in junior high, he was with his friends, and he'd go at different times or get rides or something. So walking down to the bus with my brother, I had my snowsuit on, my snow pants, my boots, and it was blowing, and we had snow fences. It just kept most of the snow off the road, but we had to walk through some snow, and it would slow me down. And he'd run ahead of me, and then he'd act like, well, I'm going to catch up with him. I'd get right aside of him, and he'd take off again. And he'd agitate me like that. Once, when I was still in elementary school, I got so upset with him, he learned to go to the bathroom to be protected, because I wouldn't go in the bathroom. So he had the bathroom door closed, and I got upset, and he wouldn't negotiate. So I ran downstairs on the back porch, and I got a hoe. And I got up to the door. I said, "You better open this door." And I hoed on the door, and I saw these chips falling. And I got scared, and I ran downstairs. My oldest niece's husband took a picture of that. The door is still there, and they will not repair it, and it's a family joke. And they look at me like I'm the bad guy, and he's the one that negotiated it. Well, anyway, from middle school and high school, I was doing as best as I could. I was average, or maybe a little above average student. Well, the principal said, "Schott, you're not going to get anywhere. You'll never be able to go to college." Well, that kind of discouraged me, but it encouraged me too. So one day in plain trigonometry class, and that would have been 11th grade, we had smart boys and then some smart girls. Well, I was kind of in between. I decided I was going to learn how to read this, because this one section seemed much simpler to me, and I could figure it out. So I figured it out. The next day, Mr. Brubaker came into the room in the class, and he says, "We're going to have a quiz today." Well, I got an A on the quiz. He never did tell me that, but I had to. He said, "Looking over these grades here, we can't count the quiz." And that's because the good kids didn't study, and they
didn't get as
C's
good a
and
grade as
D's,
you.
and I had an A. But he never wanted to tell me that.
Was your school big?
No, I went to the same school building for 12 years. I rode the bus for 12 years. So I tell my grandkids how to ride the bus. Sit down and keep your mouth shut.
What kind of things did you do for fun?
Well, on the weekends, my cousins would come. We'd jump rope. We'd play jack. When there were boys around, we'd all play baseball. And if they were in a good mood, they'd let us play with them. But I wasn't very good at it. I couldn't swing a level swing. And I always ended on the other team because they knew I'd make out. But that's okay. I was
All part of growing up.
always included.
Yep.
You know. We played up jinks. We'd sit at the kitchen table. We'd have like at least 6 or 7 on one side and the match the same equal on the other side. And one person would have a quarter. You would kind of shuffle it around between your team on the right side and then the other side of the table. They'd kind of shuffle it around. And then somebody would say, up jinks. And you put your hands up in the air. Hopefully they can't see who has it in their hand. And they'd have to guess who had it. And if they guess who had it, then we got the quarter. That team would lose the quarter and we'd go to the other one. And we'd laugh and we'd have a good time. We'd drink iced tea, water, well water, ginger ale if we have company on the weekends, and ice cream. My father would get a big 5-gallon container at a time, ice cream. Always had friends, people showing up at mealtime and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were eating. They knew about when we ate every day.
Yeah.
So if they wanted to time it, they would time it. And of course, my mother said, come on in. She always had enough for 2 or 3 more people.
Sure.
She'd have to bake a whole table, large table full of pies. I'd make a couple cakes for her. She was a good pie maker. We had Montgomery pie. We had Schnitz pie. We had...
What's Montgomery pie?
It has like a lemon pudding type thing on the bottom of it, and then like a cake, a light yellow cake looking on the top, and it's really good it moistens the cake on the top with the good lemon flavor.
Okay.
It was made from fresh lemon.
You started school about the time of World War II. Do you remember any impact of the war while you were in school?
I remember the air raids, having to go inside, and you'd hear planes going over, air raid sirens to warn you to get in.
Do you remember how you felt then?
Well, we sat close to the radio. My father always listened to the radio for the news and things. And I remember Roosevelt talking on the radio about coming of the war and where it is. And, I didn't pay as much attention as I should have.
Well, I think at that age that you're really not quite aware, but you pick up the feelings of everybody around you, I'm
Right.
sure.
In other words, we had a cistern outside that collected the rainwater from the roof. And on that cistern there was a metal door that we lifted up to clean it out or to get any extra water that we needed and use it maybe sometimes for washing. There would be a lot of bums, men who were walking the railroad, and we were close to the railroad. And they'd come up to the house, and my mother said, well, just wait a minute, and she'd come in, and she had certain old plates that she would use, and she'd fill it up with food and put it out on the cistern, and then we'd disappear in the house, and they would come and get it. They would ask to sleep in the barn for the night, and my father would have to come and make sure they didn't have matches. If they did, they had to give the matches. And he said, I'm out early in the morning. If you need your matches back, they'd pick them up and they'd just go on back on the railroad. There were steps there. Now those railroads are all pulled up, and they would come from the ore mines. And they're all pulled up, and it's a hiking, biking trail.
Okay. But they were there before for the mines and stuff?
Mine's two tracks. And we had the coal and the engines, and it would come and the wind would blow it sometimes, depending on the direction, over to our clothes on the line. We always hung our clothes out on the wash line.
Now, did you have a wringer washer back then? Do you remember?
Wringer washer, yes. I had to wash everything coming through the wringer and make sure it doesn't catch and make sure I didn't get my fingers in it. Oh, that was tricky. And that can hurt, too.
Wash day was pretty much a full day of work.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We had big iron kettles that we used when we butchered, and we put the water in there. Sometimes we had to strain it through a cheesecloth or flannel or something, so we didn't get spots on our clothes. The water was clean.
Mm-hmm.
And build a fire under the water to heat it in this big iron kettle. We couldn't wash until the water was the right temperature, and we could bucket it into the wash machine.
Oh, that was a project.
Yeah.
Did you have running water inside or a pump?
We had running water inside.
Not the quantity to fill up a washer.
It was actually, no, that was in the wash house, back side of the house. My niece and her husband don't use that. I don't know what, I think it was wood on the outside, and it had a couple windows in it. They probably tore it down and used a patio there. We had 2 big gardens in the backyard out from the wash house, and I had to help weeding those. And then down the lane we had a truck patch. We didn't have any tea bags. We picked mint tea or spearmint, and my mother had a drying rack up over the summer house. We'd put the tea in there and dry it, and then just steep it in the wintertime and make tea that way.
Right from the dried leaves.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You really were pretty self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. My mother would sell chickens. I'd help her catch them. We would raise them we'd get large boxes of small peeps and put them in our chicken house, downstairs and upstairs. And the young ones would go upstairs, and then when they got bigger, started laying eggs. Then we had metal nests for them to go in to lay their egg. My sister had a big oval scar that she had the chicken pox. It was the end of her chicken pox, and she helped me pick the eggs out from underneath the chickens. And this one chicken pecked her and took the the scab right off her nose, and she had that scar until she passed away. My father would visit a few people on Sunday. Sunday, you couldn't go swimming. You could listen to the radio and read your Bible and rest. So that was pretty much. And Sunday afternoon, we'd get company. They would feel free to come by. My dad liked that. People that were couples that usually visit regularly, and then of course you need pie and ice cream and iced tea. We made iced tea and lemonade. That was one of my jobs when I was in elementary school, and they were working in the wheat field. I had to take an enamel bucket, and my mother and I made a bucket full of, not completely full so I could carry it. And I walked across the field, and we had the ladle in it, which was enamel too. Everybody drank out of the same label because you didn't have paper cups. And you didn't need paper cups. You didn't want them blowing everywhere. But nobody got just any germs from it.
Exactly.
With the lemonade and the lemon. Lemonade and iced tea, that was our soda.
Thanks, Kathryn. Kathryn Hill's story is only about 20 minutes out of nearly 2 hours. She has a great sense of humor, and her full-length interview, of course, will tell you about how she met Cecil. And that's another story in itself. So do check out hdgstories.com, Sign up for our weekly podcast list and possibly subscribe so that you can purchase the full-length audios. Till our next podcast, have a great week.
We hope you've enjoyed today's HDG Stories podcast. We encourage you to subscribe. We hope you will share with your friends. Till the next story, we invite you to visit us at hdgstories.com.